Namaskar. Welcome to Swayam course Introduction to the High Concept in Tabla Playing. Myself Dr. Nikhil Bhagat, Associate Professor in Tabla, Department of Instrumental Music, Faculty of Performing Arts, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. This is the lecture 1 and we are going to discuss on the topic Indian music. At the beginning of the lecture, I would like to remember and pay tribute to Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande and Pandit Vishnu Digambar Paluskar, the two luminaries who brought systematic teaching and learning methods to Indian classical music, ensuring that the knowledge could be passed on more reliably. Their work prevented much traditional music from being lost in the face of modernization. Their vision and tireless efforts revived, preserved, and carried forward the legacy of Indian music, enriching both its theoretical foundations and its practice. इन दोनों विभूतियों के कार्य ने आधुनिकीकरण के सामने कई पारंपरिक संगीत को खोने से बचाया। उनकी दृष्टि और अथक प्रयासों ने भारतीय संगीत की विरासत को पुनर्जीवित किया, संरक्षित किया और आगे बढ़ाया, जिससे सैद्धांतिक आधार और क्रियात्मक पक्ष दोनों को समृद्ध किया। Importance of shastra, science or theory in music. In Indian classical music, shastra, meaning science or theory, refers to the body of theoretical knowledge that forms the foundation of the music. The Shastriya Sangeet or classical music of India is deeply rooted in the ancient texts and treatises that codify its rules and principles. The importance of Shastra in Indian classical music is immense, as it preserves the structure, authenticity, and spiritual depth of this art form. Preserving tradition. Shastra serves as the bedrock for preserving the age-old tradition of Indian classical music. It safeguards the knowledge passed down through generations by codifying the rules governing raga, tal, and various musical forms. Treatises like Natya Shastra by Bharat Muni and Sangeet Ratnakar by Nishanka Sharangdev are ancient shastra that provide fundamental knowledge for music theory, performance, and composition. These texts ensure that the Indian classical music remains rooted in its original form even as it evolves. Shastra is the guiding force behind Indian classical music, ensuring its authenticity, depth, and continuity. It preserves the art form's rich tradition while providing a theoretical framework for creativity, innovation, and spiritual growth. By understanding the respecting Shastra, musicians can elevate their practice and keep the legacy of Indian classical music alive for future generations. भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत में सैद्धांतिक पक्ष का अध्ययन महत्वपूर्ण इसलिए है क्योंकि यह संगीत की गहरी समझ और संरचना को उजागर करता है। जैसे भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत में राग और ताल की परिभाषाएं और उनके नियम बहुत सटीक होते हैं। सिद्धांत के अध्ययन से हमें विभिन्न रागों और तालों के नियमों को जान सकते हैं, जिससे संगीत की रचना और प्रस्तुति प्रभावी होती है। भारतीय शास्त्रीय संगीत में स्वर और श्रुति की विशेष भूमिका होती है। इसकी सटीकता को समझने के लिए और उनके विभिन्न रूपों को पहचानने के लिए शास्त्र का अध्ययन आवश्यक है। भारतीय संगीत के कई महत्वपूर्ण ग्रंथ जैसे संगीत रत्नाकर, नाट्य शास्त्र आदि, इनमें संगीत के सिद्धांतों की विस्तार से व्याख्या की गई है। इनका अध्ययन किए बिना संगीत का संपूर्ण ज्ञान प्राप्त करना कठिन हो सकता है। जब संगीतकार सिद्धांत को अच्छी तरह से समझते हैं तो वे अधिक रचनात्मक हो सकते हैं। वे नए राग और तालों का प्रयोग करने में सक्षम होते हैं जो संगीत को नवीनता प्रदान करती है। संगीत की विरासत को संरक्षित करना और पारंपरिक विधाएं पीढ़ी दर पीढ़ी संरक्षित रहती है, उसे संरक्षित करना संगीत की शुद्धता और प्रामाणिकता बनाए रखने में सहायक होता है। इसी प्रकार शास्त्र का अध्ययन संगीत की जटिलताओं को समझने और इससे सही ढंग से प्रस्तुत करने के लिए आधारभूत है। ओरल ट्रेडिशन एंड म्यूजिक, जिसे हम गुरुमुखी विद्या भी कहते हैं। ओरल ट्रेडिशन इन म्यूजिक refers to the process of passing down musical knowledge, compositions and performance practice by word of mouth rather than through written notation of formal documentation. The oral tradition is not only a method of transmission but also a way of preserving the authenticity, nuances and spirit of the music. In oral tradition, music is passed directly from teacher, guru to student, shishya, through personal interaction. This allows the transmission of not just the notes and rhythms but also the subtleties of style, expression and emotion that are difficult to capture in written notation. For instance, in tabla playing, the complex laikari, its execution of or variation in improvisation of qaida or peshkar can be learned accurately only by listening and observing a master musician. These elements are crucial for conveying the true essence of a tabla playing. While oral tradition is rich and dynamic, it also poses challenges in terms of preserving music in its purest form. As music is passed down orally, there is a risk of alteration or loss of certain nuances over time. In Indian classical music, the advent of written notation systems helped mitigate some of the challenges by providing a standardized way to record compositions. However, even with notation, oral tradition remains essential for capturing the subtlety and spirit of the music. The oral tradition in music is a dynamic, flexible and rich mode of transmitting musical knowledge. It not only preserves the technical aspects of music but also the cultural, emotional and spiritual dimensions, ensuring that music remains a living, evolving art from deeply connected to its cultural roots. In the classical tradition of India, the oral tradition continues to play a fundamental role in the transmission, evaluation and preservation of music across generations. संगीत में मौखिक परंपरा का विशेष महत्व है। खासकर भारतीय संगीत में मौखिक परंपरा के द्वारा संगीत की विधाएं, राग रूप, ताल प्रयोग और गुरु शिष्य संबंध की शिक्षा दी जाती है। इसका महत्व इस प्रकार है। मौखिक परंपरा के माध्यम से संगीत की बारीकियों और व्यवहारिक अनुभवों को सीधे गुरु से शिष्य तक पहुंचाया जा सकता है। यह शिष्य को संगीत की सूक्ष्मताओं और व्यवहारिक पक्षों को गहराई से समझने का अवसर देता है। भारतीय संगीत की गुरु शिष्य परंपरा में मौखिक शिक्षा महत्वपूर्ण होती है। गुरु अपने अनुभव और ज्ञान को शिष्य के साथ मौखिक रूप से साझा करते हैं, जिससे शिष्य संगीत की कला और कला को आत्मसात कर पाते हैं। शिष्य केवल तकनीकी ज्ञान तक सीमित नहीं है, बल्कि यह एक भावनात्मक और आत्मिक अभिव्यक्ति का माध्यम है। मौखिक परंपरा के माध्यम से गुरु अपने अनुभवों के आधार पर शिष्य को यह सिखाते हैं कि संगीत में भावनाओं और अभिव्यक्तियों को कैसे ढालना है। मौखिक परंपरा में गुरु अपने अनुभव से प्राप्त ज्ञान को शिष्य को सीधे संचारित करता है। शिष्य को लिखित सिद्धांतों के बजाय संगीत का व्यवहारिक ज्ञान और उसे प्रस्तुत करने की कला सिखाई जाती है। मौखिक परंपरा संगीत को एक जीवंत रूप में बनाए रखने में सहायक होती है। यह परंपरा संगीत को समय और परिस्थिति के अनुसार ढालने की क्षमता देती है, जिससे यह बदलते समय के साथ प्रासंगिक बना रहता है। मौखिक परंपरा समृद्ध और गतिशील है। यह संगीत को उसके शुद्धतम रूप में संरक्षित करने के मामले में चुनौतियां भी पेश करती है। क्योंकि संगीत मौखिक रूप से प्रसारित होता है, इसलिए समय के साथ कुछ बारीकियों में परिवर्तन या हानि का जोखिम होता है। भारतीय संगीत में लिपि प्रणालियों के आगमन ने रचनाओं को रिकॉर्ड करने का एक मानकीकृत तरीका प्रदान करके इसमें से कुछ चुनौतियां को कम करने में मदद की है। लिपि पद्धति के साथ संगीत की सूक्ष्मता और भावना को पकड़ने के लिए मौखिक परंपरा आवश्यक बनी हुई है। मौखिक परंपरा के द्वारा संगीत की पुरानी विधाएं, बंदिशें और राग ताल संरक्षित रहती है। इस परंपरा ने कई संगीत शैलियों और प्राचीन धुनों को संरक्षित किया है और जीवंत बनाए रखा है। मौखिक परंपरा संगीत को सिर्फ शास्त्र के रूप में नहीं, बल्कि एक जीवंत कला के रूप में प्रस्तुत करती है, जो गुरु शिष्य संबंध के माध्यम से निरंतर आगे बढ़ती है। इसके बाद में हम देखते हैं कि म्यूजिक क्या है। म्यूजिक एज ए परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट। What is music? Music is an art form that uses sound as its primary medium of expression. It involves organizing sounds and silence in time to create patterns that can evoke emotions, tell stories, or convey cultural values. Music is typically characterized by elements such as melody, harmony, rhythm, and dynamics. It can be performed with instruments, the human voice, or a combination of both. Across cultures, music serves various purposes: entertainment, spiritual or religious practice, social functions, and personal expression. It ranges from simple tunes to complex compositions and exists in countless forms and styles, reflecting the diversity of human experience. संगीत एक कला के रूप में है जो ध्वनि को अभिव्यक्ति के प्राथमिक माध्यम के रूप में उपयोग करता है। इसमें ऐसे पैटर्न बनाने के लिए समय पर ध्वनियों और मौन को व्यवस्थित करना शामिल है, जो भावनाओं को जगा सकते हैं, कहानियां बता सकते हैं या सांस्कृतिक मूल्यों को व्यक्त कर सकते हैं। संगीत को आमतौर पर माधुर्य, स्वर संगति, लय ताल और गतिशीलता जैसे तत्वों की विशेषता होती है और इससे वाद्य यंत्रों, मानव आवाज और दोनों के संयोजन के साथ प्रस्तुत किया जा सकता है। विभिन्न संस्कृतियों में संगीत विभिन्न उद्देश्यों को पूरा करता है। मनोरंजन, आध्यात्मिक या धार्मिक प्रथाएं, सामाजिक कार्य और व्यक्तिगत अभिव्यक्ति का इसमें सरल धुनों से लेकर जटिल रचनाओं तक शामिल है। यह मानव अनुभव की विविधता को दर्शाते हुए अनगिनत रूपों और शैलियों में मौजूद है। म्यूजिक एज ए परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट। A performing art is a form of creative expression where artists use their body, voice, or object to convey artistic ideas or emotions to a live audience. Performing arts encompass a wide range of disciplines that are often presented in real time in front of spectators. Some common type of performing arts include music, vocal or instrumental performances such as concerts, also solo performances. Dance, movement of the body in rhythmic way, often to music such as classical dance, ballet, contemporary dance or folk dance. Theatre, dramatic performance are the performance where actors portray characters in plays, musicals or improvisation. Performing arts typically differ from visual arts like painting or sculpture because they exist in a specific time and space and are usually experienced live. प्रदर्शन कला, परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट एक रचनात्मक अभिव्यक्ति का रूप है जिसमें कलाकार अपने शरीर, आवाज या वस्तुओं का उपयोग करके कलात्मक विचारों या भावनाओं को जीवंत दर्शाने के मामले में व्यक्त करता है। प्रदर्शन कला में कई प्रकार के अनुशासन आते हैं जो अक्सर वास्तविक समय में दर्शकों को सामने प्रस्तुत किए जाते हैं, जिनमें संगीत, स्वर या वाद्य यंत्रों के प्रदर्शन जैसे कंसर्ट, सोलो प्रदर्शन इत्यादि। नृत्य, शरीर की तालबद्ध गति, अक्सर संगीत के साथ जैसे शास्त्रीय नृत्य, बैले, समकालीन नृत्य या लोक नृत्य। थिएटर, नाटकीय प्रदर्शन जहां कलाकार नाटकों, म्यूजिकल्स या तत्कालीन अभिनय, इम्प्रोवाइजेशन में पात्रों को चित्रित करते हैं। प्रदर्शन कलाएं आमतौर पर दृश्य कलाओं जैसे चित्रकला या मूर्तिकला से भिन्न होती है क्योंकि यह एक विशिष्ट समय और स्थान में होती है और अक्सर लाइव अनुभव की जाती है। म्यूजिक इज फंडामेंटली अ परफॉर्मिंग आर्ट बिकॉज इट कम्स टू लाइफ थ्रू लाइव एग्जीक्यूशन and auditory experience. While the composition of music involves creativity, theory and structure, its true essence is realized when performed. Here's why music is categorized as a performing art. Music is inherently about sound and time, which means it must be performed or played to be experienced in its full form. Performance uses instruments, their voice or teaching or technology to bring a composition to life, adding dynamics, interpretation and emotion that are essential to the music impact. Performance adds a layer to immediacy and emotional connection between the musician and the audience. Musicians often respond to energy and feedback from listeners, making live music a unique interactive experience. Even with written or composed music, the performer plays a crucial role in interpreting the piece. Different performers bring their own styles, techniques, and emotional perspective, which can change how a piece is perceived. In genres like classical music, jazz and even Indian classical music, interpretation and improvisation are vital part of the performance. Certain musical forms such as jazz or Indian classical music emphasize spontaneous creation during a performance. The highlights of performance aspect of music where musicians can create new musical ideas in the moment based on their skill, knowledge and intuition. Music often reflects cultural, historical and social contexts, and these elements are expressed most vividly in live performances. In many cultures, music performance is a key part of rituals, celebration and communal gathering. The performative aspect of music is what makes it a living art. one that continuously evolves and resonates differently with each performance and each audience. संगीत एक प्रदर्शनकारी कला है या प्रयोगात्मक कला के रूप में अनूठा और महत्वपूर्ण स्थान रखती है, क्योंकि यह श्रोताओं के सामने अपनी प्रस्तुति के माध्यम से भावनाओं और विचारों का संचार करता है। संगीत का प्रदर्शन केवल ध्वनि की रचना है, बल्कि एक कला रूप है जो सीधे श्रोताओं के लिए और उनके दिलों पर, मन पर प्रभाव डालता है। संगीत को प्रदर्शनकारी कला के रूप में देखें तो यह स्पष्ट होता है कि यह न केवल एक कला है, बल्कि एक ऐसा माध्यम है जो समाज, संस्कृति और मानवीय भावनाओं को एक साथ जोड़ने का काम करता है। What is Indian music? भारतीय संगीत क्या है? गायन, वादन and नृत्य are three integral components of Indian classical music and performing arts, each representing a distinct aspect of the artistic expression. Indian music is rich and ancient tradition, deeply rooted in the cultural and spiritual history of Indian subcontinent. It encompasses a wide range of styles, genres, and tradition, but it can broadly be divided into two classical systems: Hindustani music from North India and Carnatic music from South India. Beyond classical traditions, Indian music includes folk, devotional, ghazal, and modern genres like Bollywood music. Hindustani classical music is the classical music tradition of North India with a rich history that dates back over 1,000 years. Its evolution is shaped by a blend of Vedic chants, ancient Hindu musical tradition, and Persian influence brought by the Mughals. This system of music is characterized by its improvisational nature, sophisticated structure, and strong emphasis on melodic development and rhythmic interplay. History of Indian classical music or Hindustani classical music. The roots of Hindustani music can be traced back to the Vedic period, where the music was a part of ritual and recitations. The Samveda, one of the four Vedas, laid the foundation of Indian music by singing melodic chants, which were an early form of structured musical expression. In the centuries that followed, the Natya Shastra by Bharat Muni in 2nd century, it was a crucial text setting guidelines for various forms of arts including music. The principle of raga and tala, fundamental to Hindustani music, find their earliest references in the Natya Shastra. Medieval period and Persian influence. The evolution of Hindustani music took a significant turn during the medieval period, particularly with the rise of Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire. The period saw the blending of indigenous Indian tradition with Persian, Turkic and Afghan influence, especially through the arrival of Islamic culture. During this era, a number of new musical forms emerged along with the development of new instruments such as sitar and tabla. Musicians like Amir Khusro, a poet and scholar in the court of Delhi Sultanate, played a key role in fusing Persian and Indian musical traditions, laying the groundwork of many of the forms that would dominate Hindustani music. Bhakti and Sufi movement. In parallel to Persian influence, the Bhakti and Sufi movements. In parallel to Persian influence, the Bhakti movement, Hindu devotional movement, and Sufism, Islamic mystic, deeply impacted Hindustani music during the medieval period. Both movements emphasize devotion through music, and many classical ragas and compositions were dedicated to gods or spiritual figures. Notable figures like Sant Kabir and Guru Nanak used music to spread spiritual teachings, and their compositions are still sung as a part of Indian devotional music. The Mughal era and the Golden Age. The Mughal period is often considered the golden age of Hindustani classical music. Mughal emperors like Akbar the Great were great patrons of the art, and Akbar's court musicians Mia Tansen is one of the most revered figure in Indian music history. Tansen is credited with systematizing many ragas and forms, and his innovation still resonate in music today. During this period, the Dhrupad style reached its peak. Dhrupad was primary vocal form performed in temples and courts alike, emphasizing the intricate use of rag and tal. 18th century and rise of Khayal. By the late 17th and 18th century, Khayal, a more flexible and improvisational vocal style, began to rise in popularity. Khayal allowed more expressive interpretation than the stricter Dhrupad, and the Mughal emperor started to decline. Khayal became the dominant form in North Indian classical music. The Gharana system also developed during this time, where specific families or school of music passed down their traditional styles and composition through generation. Then we have post independence and modern era. After India's independence in 1947, Hindustani music continued to evolve, gaining international recognition. Musicians like Ravi Shankar, Allah Rakha, Bhimsen Joshi, Ali Akbar Khan, Vilayat Khan, etc. helped popularizing the genre on a global scale, particularly through collaborations with Western musicians and performances in international venues. Today, Hindustani music retains a dynamic and evolving art form with traditional elements coexisting alongside experimental and fusion music. Recent trends in Indian music. Recent trend in Indian classical music reflect a dynamic interaction between Indian tradition and modernity. While the foundational aspects of Hindustani and Carnatic classical music remains grounded in centuries-old practices, artists, educators, and listeners are engaging with new technologies, global influences, and innovative formats. Hence, here are the key trends shaping Indian classical music today. Digital platforms. We all use digital platforms today, such as YouTube, Spotify, and other streaming services, has made Indian classical music more accessible globally. Online learning, traditional in-person lessons are being complemented by virtual music lessons via Zoom, Skype, and other technologies. This has democratized access to high quality instructions that was once limited to students living near established teachers. Artificial intelligence and music production. AI based platforms are starting to assist in tuning instruments like tanpura or tabla rhythm loops for practice sessions. Apps like iTabla Pro, Nad Sadhana, and many more help students and perform practice ragas with accurate drone and rhythmic accompaniment. Then we have cross-cultural collaborations. Indian classical music is increasingly being combined with Western classical music, world music, and other contemporary genres. Musicians like Anushka Shankar, Ustad Zakir Hussain, and Shubham Mudgal regularly engage in collaborative performances with international artists, blending Indian ragas and talas with Western harmonies and rhythms. Experiment in ragas. Musicians today are more open to experimenting with the form of structured ragas. New ragas are being composed, and classical musicians are also exploring unconventional raga combinations, which brings freshness to the traditional repertoire. Carnatic Jugalbandis, collaboration between Hindustani and Carnatic musicians. These performances highlight the differences in phrasing and improvisation techniques offered in rich, diverse musical expression. Contemporary instruments. While traditional instruments like tabla, sitar, mridangam remains central, there has been experimentation with Western music instruments like guitar, violin, saxophone, and piano. Indian classical music is adapted to these instruments without losing its essence, as seen in the works of musicians like L. Subramaniam, collaborates with many artists of different music genres. Then we have festivals and competitions. Large-scale classical music festivals like Savai Gandharva, Bhimsen Mahotsav, Chennai Music Sessions, and Dover Lane Music Conference, and many more continue to serve as important platforms for established artists as emerging talent. These festivals are now incorporating hybrid models, offering live streaming of performances to reach global audience. There are also increasing number of music competition on television and radio promoting classical music among children and young adults. Shows like Indian Idol and Saregamapa often have classical music segments or invite classical musicians as judge, bringing classical music to a broader mainstream audience. We can say that Indian classical music is evolving while staying deeply rooted in its tradition. The integration of technology, cross-genre collaborations, an expanding global audience, and renewed interest from younger generations are key to its continued relevance. Artists are embracing change without losing the essence of classical music, creating a dynamic and forward-looking tradition that resonates across cultures and time. So I hope you have gone through many of the aspects of Indian music in this session. With this, I conclude this session. Thank you.